Welcome to Treaty 6 and 8 territory, both sides of the Athabasca, also known as the Métis Region number 4. Also, Jasper Library. This session is called Genius Loci, and we are here tonight with Niki Wilson, one of the genius of this town. Just to sort of explain it, if you weren't watching for the last 2 weeks, the genius means also like a genie. And so it's not necessarily, although you are incredibly smart, not just because she's smart that she's here. She's one of the genies, one of the guardians of this place. She writes from Jasper, about Jasper, and then throws it out to the whole universe. A little bit like Santina last week, but different. So we're going to take a different tack. Science, not fiction. So here we go. Not that Santina's was fiction. Okay. We have some questions, and we'll be doing it as we had previously. We'll do a little bit of process, so talking about how she's a writer, what kind of writing she does, and then the product. Everybody who is tuning in right now knows Niki, otherwise they probably wouldn't be tuning in. And everybody who's in our vast audience also knows Niki. So it seems a little counterintuitive to spend a lot of time on her childhood and whatnot, but for those of you who do not know some of the secrets of Niki's life, we're about to find out. So Niki, hi.
Hi, Paulette.
And welcome, and thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to get it out of the way so I don't forget.
Yep.
Can you tell us how long you've lived in Jasper, and does living here really influence your work?
Sure. So I was born here back when you could be born here, the Seton General Hospital. You could even, I think, smoke in the hospital at that point. I mean, I don't want to say someone's turning 50 this year, but
yeah. Oh my God, I forgot that they smoke here.
So I was born here, and then I moved away for a bit. Lived in the big Alberta cities for a while for various degrees, and then I spent some time up north in the Yukon, which was really wonderful. I would say, though, back to your question about living here, this was, tell me. The question was, I feel like I got the questions ahead of time, so I'm jumping to the next question. You go, Paula.
No, go ahead, Niki. I want her to be prepared, so there's no questions.
I'm always
well.
prepared.
There might be a couple of things, but anyway, the next question was, how does this affect your work by living here?
Right. So when you grow up in Jasper, you kind of have the environment here woven into your skin. When I was growing up in Jasper, for example, we didn't have bear bins, so you just knew when you came home at night into your yard to look for bears, and it was really common for them to just be in the crabapple tree or something like that. I actually remember trying to shake one out of an aspen tree with my sister. It was a small black bear, and we were, obviously too young to really know what we were doing.
Yeah.
But being around wild things all the time really felt magical to me, and even the smallest bug on the sidewalk. I actually hit my head quite a bit as a child. I'd walk into the signs on the sidewalk and stuff. So being surrounded by all of those things really gave me an appreciation for them and a love of them, a passion for them. And it's something that just became really foundational to who I was as a person. And so I wanted to share that with everybody. And I want them to love it as much as I do.
So one of your first degrees, would that be the biology?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all like animal based.
Yeah, my first degree is in zoology, which is the study of animals. And I did a minor in physical geography, which is the study of physical processes like mountain making.
Cool.
So I think that's another way Jasper shaped me, is that those were the things that I was interested in and brought to my degree. Another reason, though, I chose to go that route was because I had a really great mentor in high school.
George cost you
Are you watching?
I knew
doubt
it. I knew it. We'll find him after.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later. But I could have gone into writing, but damn him.
He was amazing.
Yeah.
He knew so much about so much.
Yeah.
That I worked with him, so he was. If I had a question so my question to him was, and this is how we became friends. There was we had towels on the back of the bathroom door, and there's a radiator there. And I said, George, when a towel dries, is it going to dry from the bottom up? Like, is it like reverse osmosis, like heat osmosis kind of thing? And he just sort of looked at me and said, come here. So after that, he was the go-to guy. He would explain absolutely everything.
Lots of passion.
Yeah.
That's what was really beautiful about being his student.
Yeah.
And you just couldn't not get turned on by it. Like it was,
electrifying.
Yeah.
It really was. And I went on your website. And this is one of the things, she talks about, like you're not even standing there. Niki, the best line on the website is, I grew up dodging bears and avoiding rutting elk in Jasper National Park. So it kind of gives you an idea too of when people find out that you were born and raised here in Jasper, I don't know that they know how much fun and dangerous it is to live here as a child. But it really is. It's fun, and it's the only place where, as a teacher, I got a note. Well, it wasn't even a note. The kid, Rakely, came running into school, and he was late because there was an elk calving on his porch, and so he couldn't get to school. And you're like, yep, that'll do. Like, it doesn't fit in the government form of why is he acceptably absent, but he was just late because of the elk. So I was like, oh. Crazy.
Well, I remember before, I grew up before the school grounds were fenced, and most of you watching probably know that elk are really attracted to these beautifully manicured green spaces we have. So during the rut in the fall, they'd be on the school field, and you just kind of knew at some point you might be charged. Even though, Parks Canada spent a lot of time and money flushing them away to keep us safe, but occasionally you might have to run under a car or like roll under a car.
Yeah.
To not get stopped.
And it's not as weird as it sounds. That's why we stay thin. It's from rolling under cars.
Live. You gotta run to be able to run.
Yeah. That's why they had these big boulders in the schoolyard. I was convinced of that so that the kids could hide behind the big boulders all over the place. That's another story. Okay, so where'd you go to school? This is good. Oh, best teacher, George cost you, of course. Worst teacher. But you don't have to say the name. But was there a worse teacher? Maybe somebody who's not here.
Yeah, I had a great junior high and high school experience. My teachers were, like, for example, one of them was simultaneously running for federal politics and teaching us about politics. I had, there was actually a sort of trifecta of these three guys who were really politically active, and it felt, this is the 80s, so it's punk rock music, and it's, it was sort of this amazing time to be forging your own political ideals and views on things. And then, I had an amazing English teacher who, university English was like, after being in Angie Lemire's class,
piece of cake.
Piece of cake. Yeah. Wasn't always easy, but I was damn prepared when I got there. So, there was one that was a little bit apathetic. I probably could have mailed it in a little less, but generally, I think I was there at just this really golden time. Yeah.
I asked because sometimes the worst teacher will be like your best example of what not to do or what not to be.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Especially in junior high, because it is a really it's a formative years, right? 7, 8, and 9, everybody's crazy, super crazy.
I was.
Yeah,
it was a bit hellish, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Like not going back if there's a time machine invented, that's for sure.
No, but you do learn a lot.
Yeah.
I went back to school today, so I'm a bit reminiscing about that.
Yeah.
So that's why. But I thought, oh my God, I wonder if there was somebody who missed the opportunity to see what a great person you were going to become. Like, good teachers can sort of see into the future, and we look at kids and you go, yes, no, whatever. But then, there's some teachers that just, like you said, have already checked out and they don't see it.
Yeah, I have this really clear recollection of, I had a teacher in grade 5, Vonna Arsenault, who's since passed, but she was really a wonderful lady. And that's when I wrote my first novel. It was 10 pages. My first novel, my only novel.
10 pages.
It was
Wow.
10 pages. It was
Wow.
like, I was really attracted to drama, so it was like this husband and wife, and then I think he murdered her, and
Nice.
anyway, so I just wrote it on my free time. Like, imagine what kind of kid I was. Anyway, so I take it to school and I show it to her, so she takes the time to read it, and she was so respectful, and I clearly remember the look on her face and how she was talking to me. And she said, "I think this is great. Here's what I would work on. Stretch the story out a little bit.
15, 20 pages.
Yeah, throw a few pages on there. And, I can't wait to see the next rendition." But that memory is as clear to me as it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how those
Meant
little
so much.
pearls, all of a sudden it's like, I can do this.
Yeah.
I can. And Vaughn is not wasn't a writer. Like, it's not like you were looking for a mentor somehow, but she was just such a great person too. And that's
Validation.
Jasper. You got all that stuff in Jasper. All those people are so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I add something
Sure.
onto that? I would say I've now interviewed like hundreds of women scientists from around the world, every continent almost. And I could say that in terms of mentorship, that most successful women scientists who I've been able to talk to or interview, or science communicators, will say that key to their success was someone who was rooting for them in their family, professionally, that helped elevate them, that said, "I believe in you." And that theme has come out clearly over and over again.
So when they were children.
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah,
said that.
or when they, got older in high school, or when they moved along to early university or what have you. So that theme of, mentorship and validation, like, you just never know when you're going to be there at that critical moment for someone.
Yeah.
That could just have sort of easily just kind of gone this way had they not gotten it. What a waste. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm thinking of Sandy Cox, who had the genius to have this book. It's like an anthology, and it's an anthology from grade 1 to grade 12. So all the kids in the school system here in Jasper will be in an anthology like this. I'm not sure when they stopped doing it, but I happened to find one that was from 1986, 1987, and happens to be Niki's first poem ever published. I would like to share that with you if that's okay.
Oh yeah, it's fine.
And it's actually really good. I'm not trying to belittle her or anything right here. This is actually really
So
good.
87, so I'm like,
Grade 9.
yeah, grade
Yeah.
8, grade 9, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just be sweating over here.
But it's so. But when you think about
Okay.
it, it's so much of what kind of a person you are now. So here you are. The two selves. The inner self holds a bag of feelings deep inside. The outer self lives with the world and rules it must abide. The inner self is itself, for it has nothing to hide. And the outer self won't be itself, or show the tears it's cried. It rhymes, so I do have a bit of a problem with that one, but
It's very
it's so
conformist.
much, like it's the dichotomy that I think everybody has. We've got an inside and we have an outside. You're a fiction writer, you are, and a non-fiction writer, and a communicator encompasses the whole thing. And I think it's really important to know that these geniuses, women, have an inside as well. That is, it's a person. And so that's Niki's, I don't want to say genius again, but genius again, and charm is that no matter what you're writing, it comes out. There's that the inside comes out, and it just makes everything so readable and so enjoyable. And I think that's a real kudos to you as a person. Thank you. So there you go.
You know what else I hear, speaking of mentorship in that poem, is I loved Shel Silverstein.
Yeah.
And when I hear that poem, I remember I would just go through his books over and over, Where the Sidewalk Ends and all of those good ones. And I hear his influence actually in that. Yeah.
And so reading is a really important thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip right to the last question.
Okay, I'm good with that.
What are you reading right now?
Well, I'm in a book club, which is great because it sort of keeps me reading things I wouldn't necessarily choose, and sometimes reading good material when at the end of a day of writing, I just, like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I got a few fantasy books on the, like,
go.
vampire time, you know what I mean? Like, it's been a day of climate change writing, so
Yeah.
going to an
yeah.
ancient land where
yeah.
there's no so that happens, like, for sure. I just finished a really wonderful book called We Once Were Vikings, and the point of view is a woman who's about 21 years old, and you get the feeling she's on the autism spectrum somewhere, and her mom definitely had some substance abuse issues while she was in utero. And I find with some of these books, you know, writing from that point of view can really be, you have to be very careful that, I mean, you're putting yourself in someone else's lived experience, and I think you have to be very careful that I think you have to be very careful with that. But there was something so enchanting and beautiful about this character because of who she was, not because of things she'd overcome. It was because of who she was in the world, and it was written by a guy, I'm forgetting his name at the moment, but anyway, I was just so taken with it, and it was so charming, the writing, and I just, you know, when you're in the presence of good writing, you're just kind of like have a buzz after finishing it.
Because you trust the author.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
you think, just take me.
Yeah.
Wherever you want to go, I'll follow you.
Yeah.
It's fine, I believe everything you say.
Yeah.
That's a really good writer.
Yeah, it was a great book. And then I think I've got, thanks to some of the ladies in the club, I've got the new Guy Vanderheide coming up, and
cool.
So vampires, you can wait.
Do you binge? Do you read the whole book and then?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
If I can stay awake. If it's good, sometimes I can. Yeah, for sure.
Do you only read at night?
Yeah. On the weekend, sometimes I read during the day, but yeah.
When I was a kid, that was the best Saturday, was just like squirrel yourself away somewhere so your mom wouldn't find you, to find more chores for you to do and just read.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, once I retire, I'll just read all day long, and I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't read at night either because it puts me to sleep.
But do you find you spend so much time with words, sometimes you don't spend more time with words at night?
Yeah.
I have that reaction sometimes.
I was starting to dream that in typewriting. Like when I was writing a novel, I was going over it and over it and over it so much, and then at night I would dream, and then instead of having dialogue with characters in my head, it would be like somebody's typing it out, and I could read it like a script, and I thought, oh my god, I'm so tired.
Raymond's like, stop typing on my back.
delete. Yeah. So we've done the reading part. Let's go back to, let's say, even just a typical day then. If you're not reading all day long, what do you do?
Well, so I work on, I spend a lot of time writing, but I also consult a bit in science communications to a couple of organizations and have some other projects on the go. So I usually get up in the morning, and I'm just going to be honest, I hop on Twitter because I look for new science stories on Twitter. So I put in a couple of search terms, see if anything big has blown up overnight, and kind of keep my eye on the science Twitterverse there. I try not to be on there too long. My husband brings me tea in the morning with phoned oat milk.
Oh, nice.
Yes, so I sit there, tea. I have my Twitter time, unless I'm really busy. And then I'll usually just kind of have a look at the day. And, if I'm going to be spending a lot of time writing, I'll try and block that out so I don't have a lot of distractions during the writing time, which was super fun during the pandemic when we were all home together. We made it work, but yeah, for sure, it's hard.
Did you guys have like all different devices?
Yeah.
Did you find there was lag time in the internet?
Yeah, we upgraded. We upgraded. It would sometimes we'd all be in a Zoom meeting or something at once, and it was
all of a sudden it gets glitchy and you
Yeah, it was such a challenge for sure.
who's getting paid the most right now? You
Yeah.
get the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Dylan, you can learn later. Yeah.
Call a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get caught up. So I'll block out my writing time, and then I kind of, you know, have prearranged a lot of meetings around that usually. You know, I'm in a production schedule right now for a podcast I'm a part of, so some of that's kind of immediate and requires reaction time, but I try and I do try and protect that writing and creative time and have it be kind of a calm space and time where I don't have too much coming in.
I don't even know how.
Yeah,
Because
it's a challenge.
You're working on the Anthropomania, the podcast, which is genius.
Stop.
And you know, it is, it's so much fun. And so tell me a little bit about that. Like, how do you, you're not going to a big city and doing this, like you guys are all like zooming in? How do you do
Yeah,
that?
it's crazy. I mean, when you just think of how much things have changed in the past decade, but even since the pandemic started, right? So this was a passion project that my co-host Jay Ingram and I wanted to do. We've been talking about something like this for a while. The theme of the show is how humans relate to other living things. And anthropomania is a made-up word that comes from anthropomorphism, which is just kind of inflict our humanness onto other things. But we didn't feel it was quite, you know, reflective of where we wanted to go, so we had to add the mania. So we ended up, he had been just talking to an old producer of his in Toronto, so we ended up just kind of talking to her. And then, you know, she's brought in some other people. So we have our sound engineer is in Halifax. Our chase producer is in Montreal. Our main producer is in Toronto. Jay is in Calgary, and I am here. And it's all done online with available software on the internet. You know, we do interviews through something called Squadcast, which kind of looks like two Zoom rooms together. We double end interviews, so I have a recording device on my end, you know, so we can get better sound that way. I've done some crazy stuff, like for last year, I just had like a camp foamy to make my podcast studio, and then I was like in a blanket fort trying to, you know, so you get good sound that way. This year, my husband Jeff and I put together a more professional looking studio for me. It's like a big piece of cardboard that we've glued felt to that I yard out every time, put on my desk, make the cave. Get in there.
You have to though.
Yeah, you have to, or it sounds bad. And you know, podcasting is all about intimacy. People don't want to be pulled out of that
they want to feel
intimate
like
space. Yeah, they want you there in the ear. So if you don't do the sound right, and truthfully, most podcasts, because there's thousands now, you know, are kind of we call them the two bros in the basement podcast,
where they're so having so much fun.
It's you do. It helps to have good production around the sound so people can just relax into it.
So do you record everything and then it gets mixed somewhere else?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right term.
By our sound engineer in Halifax,
Unreal.
Jason Barkhouse. Yeah, I think he's real. I mean, he comes on the screen every week. We see him there. I have only ever met Jay. That's the only person on our podcast I've met in person. As a matter of fact, on all the teams I'm on right now, I have never met any of them in person.
Your eyes are like this right now. I was like, wait a second.
I know, I'm having an opinion. Well, we always joke, this other team I'm on, we always joke that, you know, we'll have we're actually have, you know, remember Barba Papa from when we were young?
Yeah.
The Barba Papa cartoon where they were like these amorphous blobs and they'd go clickety click, Barba trick, and their body would turn into all these shapes. And we kind of joke that someone's gonna have something weird like that. We never detected on the, they'll stand up and they'll be a Barba Papa cartoon or something. Yeah.
Or only real from here.
Yeah.
Everything else is just a blur.
Yeah.
Just a blur.
Or they're just a robot from here down.
Maybe they're bots.
I hope not. They've got me fooled. I feel like I'm with real people.
Well, you guys, this is your second year, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like COVID had an anniversary and you guys had an anniversary. That's so nice.
Oh yeah.
It was such a nice, and it was such a nice distraction from every other thing that was going on that was ridiculous in the world.
Yeah.
And then you go into this podcast, and it was like, did you know that, what's that guy's name? He has a hippo. Had a hippo.
Oh, the cocaine hippos.
Yeah.
Pablo Escobar,
Pablo
the drug
Escobar
lord from
had a
Colombia.
Had hippos. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn so much. It's just unbelievable. And I sit there and laugh, and then it's fun and it's entertaining, but it's also really serious because, like the last episode was, do documentaries, do they help or do they hinder wildlife and the environment? And so my two bits is that, yeah, I think documentaries are really important and will become even more important because people shouldn't travel to those places. I think one of the ways that we can say thank you to the environment, or enjoy the environment that we have, or protect the animals, is like, don't visit. It's good. Don't visit. It's fine.
Well, we should have interviewed you for that because we did not get that perspective on the podcast.
What?
I'm going to tell the team, the real team, when I see them online next week.
The real team.
Yeah. They're out there.
Yeah, I thought it was great, and I talked back to you guys and stuff too. So if you want, sure.
I'm going to give you a recording device.
Sure.
I want that.
You'll be sorry. Okay. Anthropomania. Okay, we did that. Oh, do you have? And this is sort of, it's really big, so it's more of a kind of amorphous thing as well. But do you have advice for non-streamlined sort of writers? What am I trying to say?
Freelance writers?
Sure, freelance writers, people who just, or who would like to write about science, science-based whatever, articles and whatnot. I can give advice or, sort of move people in the direction where I come from as a writer, but I'm sure there's a lot more that enjoy your type of writing. So what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think if you're new to writing, one of the best things you can do is just get started writing. Yeah. And so while you're figuring out how to run the business side of it, just start putting something on paper. And you don't even have to publish it at first, but writing, as we both know, is a muscle you flex. And the more you flex it, the better you get at it. And 80% of it's probably not great. And that's what editing is for later, but it's really important to start flexing that muscle, whether it's a blog or, it's a journal or however you're doing it. I think that's really important. The other thing I would say is that there is not one piece of material that I have gotten in a publication that includes Canadian Geographic, the BBC, PBS. I'm trying to think of anywhere I've written that I have not gotten that contact through another contact.
Yeah, like a relationship.
Yeah, and so networking is so important, and that's going to the conferences and going to the social part after and meeting people and being genuinely curious about their careers, reaching out to them. I'm amazed, I'm truly amazed. Both Jay and I teach in these science communication workshops, and we offer free mentoring after. I've had 2 people in 3 or 4 years take me up on that, and it's shocking to me. So finding mentors, reaching out. When I get asked for a mentoring conversation, I always make time for that because it's giving back. So I think those networks, asking for help, reaching out, being curious, and getting the writing going, and don't be afraid to just start somewhere. I mean, the advice I got when I first met Jay and some of the other mentors in my life was, why don't you start writing in your local newspaper? So I did, the Jasper Fitzhugh, and I went from the Fitzhugh to the BBC that's a leap. It's a leap because I had connections.
Like BBC, I know BBC, or
BBC Earth, but that was through a connection, but it was also based on the clips I had been putting together for 2 years at the Fitzhugh. And so, in this era, don't be afraid to just start putting your work somewhere. Get paid though. Yeah.
Get paid.
Pay the writer.
Yeah.
I mean, we all do things sometimes to get a little ahead. I've done them. You volunteer, especially for organizations that are maybe doing things that we want to help out with. But ultimately, you don't want to be paid badly for too long. Don't do it.
Do you guys get do you guys, like your science people, do
Yes.
do you have I know that the Writers Union, we have a set amount of money for, like, even just, mostly it's by time. And some different contracts will have, like, by the word. So do you mind if I ask you?
No, go
Do
ahead.
you have a union that tells you how much you're supposed to charge?
Yeah, there's a lot of help that way. So science writers is what we're called when I'm doing that kind of journalism, and we have massive organizations.
Oh, yeah.
We have the Science Writers and Communicators of Canada, and then the even bigger organization that all Canadians also, or many Canadians also belong to, which is the National Association of Science Writers in the US. And we have thousands and thousands of members, and that gives us some lobby power in contract negotiation, at least to the extent that they know someone is watching. It doesn't mean rates haven't come down a lot since smartphones came around. They have. For example, National Geographic, I think, used to pay for a print article around $4 a word US, and I think now it's, can be 1 or 2 for some of that work. It's all about your experience and how you negotiate that contract, but we are aware through that organization of what publications pay, and I'm a member of a lot of writers groups where we have informal conversations about that, and there's a lot of support to be paid what you're worth and to let magazines and other places know. Truthfully, I've had very respectful pay from most of the places I've worked.
They don't try to rip you off.
But some of them will start out lower, and so it's always good to. I'm someone who has trouble. This is me negotiating. I'm kind of like, hi, if you don't mind, if I could sort of just, can we just, so can we just bump that up? Yeah. So that's a muscle I've had to learn to flex, is like asking for more money or asking for more. And then you have an experience where you do that, and you're like you're sweating. And they write back right away, and they're like, fine, and you think, I should have asked more. That's what they're paying everyone else. So
it's all of a twist.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's an art form. I mean, some of my colleagues are really good at it, and they love that part of it. I just it's hard.
I'd rather have the contract and everything is already spelled out and says you're going to get paid this much for this work, and you can say yes or no. You sort of go, it's a little weird, but yeah. So did they like at the beginning? It's probably different than now, but at the beginning, when people are just starting out, would you suggest to them to read magazines that are interesting to them, and that's where they should apply first? That sort of things. Like, what do you like to read? Then that's where you should ask to be published. Right? Figure it out.
Yes. And you should definitely be familiar with this writing style of the magazine that you're, because really your pitch to that magazine is the first exposure that editor might get to you. So if you pitch something about Wolverines and they just did a feature story last month, that doesn't look good. So to the extent you can, doing the research, knowing again what's, you don't pitch a 3,000 word feature length article to some place that only does 500 word articles. And that. So know the magazine, and a lot of the information you might need to find the editor is sometimes in the masthead, which is that little box that tells you who everyone is, that no one reads anymore because they read a lot online. But there can be some little hints in there too to help you find people. So
that's one of the things that I found was that even like nowadays too, magazines are scarce. A lot of things are online. So I found that the competition for writing is really high, because when they'll send out, we're looking for this on a particular topic, whatever, and then instead of 500 people, it's like 5,000 people will write back. So the smarter you write and more pointed to their specificity stuff, like that,
gotcha.
is better instead of just a broad sort of. Well, I would like to write about living in Jasper. What?
You have to pitch a story, not a topic, or
Yeah, right.
And the other thing I would say is like editors have a job to do. Like they are working often for the magazine, or they're contracted to the magazine to solve problems and to populate the content of that magazine. And the easier you make that for them,
Right.
and the more reliable you are. I mean, I've had editors just thank me for handing in clean copy, which I think is nuts. Like,
Yeah.
hand in clean copy. But
Yeah.
if you're just a hard worker who gives good pitches and, you know, hands things in on time, that goes a long
It has
way.
to be in on time.
It has to get.
It has to be
And
in.
yet, I just hear this over and over. So yeah, all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially, and I've had a couple of people who have approached me with a manuscript, and they'd say, "Okay, can you just fix it though? Like, just give it a quick boo and kind of fix it." And I'm like, "Okay, for $1 a page, I will fix your thing." And they're like, "But it's 400 pages." Yeah. Imagine, like it's massive, and no correcting, no, you know, the spelling is wrong, no indentations for the paragraphs. It was just like $1.50 a page instead.
Yeah.
So yeah, clean copy is very important. Even if you think that there's an editor on the other side of the chain, whatever, and they'll fix it for you, they probably won't.
Yeah. Well, and they remember you when it's easy because you've just freed up 3 hours in their day. So.
Yeah. So they love you.
I think so. A lot of the I don't think it's the genius quality. I think I'm a hard worker, and I do turn things in on time.
Yeah.
And I try and be really respectful of their time in the process. You know, the odd writer will make editor jokes to me, and I have never seen editors that way. I've always seen them as my allies, and they make my work better. You know, and have caught a couple of big mistakes. I mean, sometimes you get so, I mean, you know, I'll get an assignment, like this is more rare because it's a little outside my beat, which is kind of nature and the environment and wildlife, but Bioscience magazine was like, could you write a feature on nanoparticles? It was like doing another master's degree. Honestly, it was so stressful.
Wow.
So far into the weeds, like, and thank God for that editor. You know, she was just like, oh, let's pull this back up here to this level. And so, yeah, I mean, there have been times when I've written to them and said, I've lost myself. I try not to do that too much, but I think they also appreciate the heads up, like, and sometimes they say, oh, okay, I didn't realize that about this topic, and we problem solve it together.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so
definitely allies.
They come and find you.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Is there something that you've always wanted to write about that hasn't made it out there yet?
That's a good question. I've had the privilege of writing about so many things from the natural world, especially because I wrote for Natural History magazine for so long, and you're just cranking out articles all the time, and so eventually there's no sort of yucca plant or beetle or you know, rare spider you haven't kind of touched on, which I love. So I would say, you know, nothing really comes to mind. I've been really sort of blessed in this career. If anything, I would just love more time to do kind of essay writing and with my own point of view, and try to bring more storytelling and emotion into some of these longer pieces. When I'm a feature writer for a magazine, I have an objective that I need to meet for them, and I really enjoy that challenge too. But if someone threw a bag of money at me and said, write us a series of essays on the environment, anything you want,
Thank you.
That would be pretty fun.
So that's what I was wondering if you ever, because you write for your living, right?
Yeah.
So I was wondering about what you write for your life. Like, do you write stuff that's fun? Do you still do poetry? And I know you how to surpass that, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah,
quite something.
There might be more than just the one poem. Like, because I've seen some of your other writing, and it's very good.
Oh, thanks, Paulette.
So that's what I wonder. Like, do you ever, like, you don't have. I was gonna say you don't have your voice in Anthropomania or anything, but you really do. You really do. And anybody who's read any of your work in the National Geographics and the Canadian Geographics will know that your voice comes out too, and that perspective from I guess. Just the love that you have. But I wonder, your voice, what would it sound like? What would it look like? If you could write something just for fun with the bag of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even I feel bad for saying the bag of money now, because even without the bag of money, I mean,
No, keep the bag of money. It's fine.
bags of money are nice, but
Yeah, bags of money. Agree.
and I should say, you think about bags of money as a freelancer. Advice tip, like number 10: don't
Take the
freelance if you want to be rich.
Take the money.
Yeah. But I do love poetry. It's where I started, as you can see from my
It's
grade
true.
9 poem. But I actually went on to publish a bit of poetry after that, just in some regional anthologies and stuff. And my sort of inner writing self speaks to me that way, in that kind of language.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually feel, this one's for you, Sue. I'm watching for the waterworks. Sue was teasing us before that I wouldn't make her cry, so I'm trying to think of how, but sorry, I digress. I actually feel a little bit neglectful of that inner writer who has been trying to talk to me in that voice for really my whole life, and I have given it very little time. And part of that is just, life catching up with you, and kids and family and bags of money you're trying to
Chasing the bag of money.
Yeah, and there's only so many hours in the day, but I do see that's a place I want to spend more time as I get older. I've been trying to write a series of poems that are kind of, it's a spell book, for Jasper, and maybe I'll read one after.
I would love that.
But yeah, I'm, weirdly, now that I'm saying it out loud to you, I'm sort of filled with longing a little bit.
Yeah, or you just want to write for you.
Yeah, because I do, you're right, I spend a lot of time writing for other people.
Mm-hmm. Which is good, because you hone your craft that way.
Absolutely.
And the craft is demanding. It has to be exacting, and that'll be good for you when you start writing poetry. Again, it'll be just, you're very, very exacting, and that's going to really serve you well.
Discipline.
Yeah, it's a big, huge discipline. And that brings us back to the beginning when you were saying you block off, certain amounts of time, maybe between the hours of 3 and 4 in the morning. When you're wasting your time sleeping, you could be, writing in your sleep like I do, and do that. That would be great.
My husband, the man who brings me the tea in the morning, is sitting over there, and so I just feel the need to say, my alarm doesn't go off until 7:30, and then I don't, so unless I really have somewhere to be, 8's a pretty good time for me to roll downstairs, so
yeah.
I can see him smiling about the 3 and 4 in the morning.
Oh no, he's crying.
Yeah, he's like, that's too early for tea. You can do it, Jeff. You can still do it.
Get in there.
Yeah.
I know when I was teaching, it was a full day, but I had this novel that was in my head, right? So I had to get up at 5 in order to write till 7 and then go to work.
Well,
but that doesn't actually work really, really well, because I was still sleeping when I was typing and doing stuff. And then I remember once being at school and talking to the kids, and then all of a sudden this scene came in my head, and it was for the novel, and so I'm watching it sort of spin out and going, huh. And then I looked out and went, oh crap, they're all there, and all the kids went. And I thought, have I said this out loud? Terrible, horrible part of the story. And I thought, oh, what have I done? So I said, okay, let's go back. Okay, tell me exactly what I just said.
Yeah.
And they did, and it wasn't nothing to do with the novel, thank God. But then I realized, okay, we're treading a pretty fine line here. It's time, so I had to make a choice.
Yeah.
Sleep or not.
I'm militant about sleep, because I'm just a bear. If I don't, some people can kind of ride that line, I can get by on 5 or 6. No, I'm horrible.
No, you can't. No.
And by day 3 of it, I'm just like,
Jeff is spiking
I'm
your
crying
tea in the morning. Here,
Yeah.
okay, go back to bed.
Yeah, they're afraid at the door. Yeah, it's not good. Yeah.
Okay, before we get into the Proust sort of questionnaires. There's another about 5, just like random questions. But I think it'd be a good spot to see some of your process, so we can take a look at the work that you've done, if you don't mind. Do I have it or do you have it? Oh, you think? Yeah.
Would you like me to read?
Yes.
Okay.
I would.
Okay. Well, I was thinking, because this isn't creative writing, I was kind of thinking about what folks in Jasper might want to hear, and so I chose a piece I wrote for PBS, which is an American sort of educational outlet in the States, and but it's written about the place we live, and so this was written in 2018, and it's called "The Legacy of Big Boy, the Grizzly Bear." Mating season is one of the most dangerous times of year for male grizzly bears that roam between the province of Alberta and Jasper National Park, Canada. As they travel hundreds of miles in search of a mate, they are at risk of poaching, accidental shootings, collisions with cars and trains, and sometimes fatal attacks from other males willing to fight to the death for a female grizzly nearby. It's a tough place to make a living, where many bears die very young. But at 31 years old, a male grizzly known to researchers as G006, nicknamed Big Boy, has defied the odds, leaving behind a genetic legacy that may shape this grizzly bear population for decades to come. Gord Stenhouse, research scientist and lead biologist for the Foothills Research Institute Grizzly Bear Program, first met Big Boy in 1999. As part of his work to understand how humans and bears can coexist on shared landscapes, he and his team fitted a number of grizzly bears with GPS collars to track their movements over the course of a year. Big Boy made an impression. At the time, he was 16 years old and already weighed 675 pounds. He showed a lot of aggressive behavior while we tried to capture him, says Stenhouse, describing how Big Boy would lunge at the helicopter as they pursued him during aerial capture operations. In 2002, the last year they worked with Big Boy, they spotted him running down a hillside with an adult female bighorn sheep in his mouth, her legs flapping over his shoulders. Stenhouse moved on to working with other bears, and Big Boy was left to live out the rest of his life in peace. But an analysis of the DNA collected from the hair of multiple bears in the study area in 2014 showed that he did anything but fade into the sunset. Big Boy, now 31 years old, was very much alive and had fathered a large proportion of the bears from the study area, at least 10 they knew of, and those are the only ones we know about, said Stenhouse. A number of factors likely contributed to his success. When Stenhouse had one of Big Boy's blood samples analyzed, the results showed that Big Boy had the highest testosterone levels of any bear he'd handled in 20 years. If you're a young male bear trying to mate with a female and Big Boy comes around, you run the other way, said Stenhouse. And while some males will find a female and just kind of hang out with her until she's ready to mate, Big Boy was a bear willing to cover hundreds of miles or kilometers of rugged mating territory to check on the readiness of multiple females, a behavior Stenhouse has detected in some other males in the same area. How Big Boy managed to fling his genes so far afield is impossible to know for sure, says Stenhouse. We can't just simplify things in the world of bears. Understanding social behavior is something we're just starting to get insights into now because of changes in technology. But one thing is certain, a bear that's lived that long is a smart bear, says Stenhouse. He's figured out ways to avoid being in conflict with people. With any luck, his offspring will do the same. I hope he's still out there.
I think he is, because we're doing scats as well. Would you find DNA in scat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. You can find some.
That was a really cool job to have for a little while. There was Mark Bradley had asked if we would just collect scat as I walked, and so every time I'd see bear scat, I'd have to put it in a little container and then write down where we were and whatever. And so they send it to Norway, somewhere. crazy for DNA testing to find out which males and which females are populating a specific area.
Mhm.
So this guy is a legend. Legend.
Yeah, I think they get some information from it. I'm not sure. Well, we have two biologists here. Well, you can get DNA from bear scat early. Yeah, thank you. Because I'm a science writer, I want to fact check myself.
Smart girl.
Fact check.
Smart girl, because there's people pulling out their phones right now.
Well, I would be, because I'm that person.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can read. So I'll read a little piece from the spell book. And so, so you'll see probably that I bring some of my other life to the poetry, but so this spell is about how to conjure the aurora. Talk to the sun, upset her. Say something about her mass, her age, her dying light. Call the hot mixture of gases to boil, set the charges, and unleash the winds. Make your plans. Blankets and backpacks, the floating dock long abandoned by summer swimmers, a clear night. Lay back, it won't be long.
Yeah, I think you're good. I think it's going to be fine. Yeah. I can hardly wait to read the book.
That's the first time I've read anything of poetry that I've written, well, since high school, probably.
So you guys got the first bit. That's
So
great.
thank you for
bringing that. I appreciate that. It's. I think it's a beautiful mix between science and science and poetry. But I think the more you get into science, the more it sounds like poetry as well, because it's a different. It's just a different way of seeing the world, and that's what poets do. We just have a different way of seeing the world. It's not wrong or anything. It's another way of coming at it. So science is a beautiful way of coming at it because it makes sense, and there's a flow, and there's a poetics in chaos. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, ready for the Proust?
I'm ready for the Proust.
Here we go.
I'm ready. Hang on, Paulette. Hang on.
Sometimes you need to have a very big French accent when you're doing the Proust question.
Okay. Well, you should be able to pull that off.
I think so.
Okay.
We'll try. They're not very many.
Okay.
2 words that would describe you at your best. No, that's more Russian. Damn.
Yeah.
Sorry, blame Putin on that one.
You don't want that right
No, we
now.
don't want that. 2 words that would describe you at your best.
Jordan?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe.
2 words at my best.
Yeah.
I would say grounded and curious.
What does success look like to you?
Ideally, success, at least career-wise, would mean that I've made an impact on somebody who's read something that I've written, whether it just made their day better, or they were entertained, or they were moved maybe to action. Some of the other pieces I've written about climate change or biodiversity, but really, I really want that relationship with the audience, and if I found a way into people's lives like that, I'd be really grateful.
What do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? I don't know if you have a plan. Some people have a plan.
It's pretty loose, but I not just because we discussed this, but I do want to be in a place where I can do a little more of that essay writing and poetry writing, and I've kind of been tweaking bits of my career to free up some of that time to do that. So yeah, that's my plan. In 3 to 5 years from now, I'd like to put down the final pieces of the career that are the things I kind of have to do, and be moving towards the things that I just really have passion for and want to do.
I'll be here. Call me. Okay. What would be your dream job?
I mean, I feel like we've kind of touched on this a little bit because I was talking about the bags of money in essay writing. I feel like if there was a journalist here right now, that would be my pull quote, bags of money. And yeah. That's so not me, but yeah, just all about it. But you know, I miss traveling, and so to go to communities. You know, when I lived in the Yukon Territory, I wasn't working as a writer. I was working more as a biologist. But one of my jobs was to travel to all the communities. I worked for the First Nations there, and I really miss meeting people and going places and having time to learn and embed. And so if I could be doing some writing where I was able to do those kinds of projects, you know, build trust with the people I'm working with, travel some new places and learn, I would love that. I'm sort of a rabid learner, so the more coming in, the better. But it's nice to do that with real people in a new place too.
And I think that's one of the cruxes is you're talking about relationships, right? And if you stay in a place long enough, then you can develop those relationships, and that's when you really start to learn. And yeah, I wish you time, and I wish you bags of money. Time and health and. Do we have any questions? We do have like maybe 2 minutes left.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Niki, I've known you a long time, and you are so humorous and witty. And when stuff like that comes out in your writing, when you're able to write something that's a little on the lighter side, and you wrote that letter to the editor, to the drunk August birds.
Oh, the waxwings.
And it was brilliant.
Oh, thank you, Sue.
It was brilliant, and I could hear you. It was as if we were joking some night, talking about those drunk birds. But it was so brilliant, and it was your humor that came out. But it was also a little bit of a science lesson about what these birds do in August.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, because you know that article comes back. It was about, you know, how waxwings get drunk off the berries and they act crazy, and but that article just comes up sometimes. You know, someone will do a weird search and whatever, and it makes me long to do more of that writing again. I think because it also gave me nice connections with people like yourself, who I would like to say thanks, because you're always really kind in passing along
Thank you.
The appreciation, and so I really appreciate that. Writing is lonely sometimes, and it's so nice to
you forget that people are actually going to read it.
Yeah. But I know on that, I've heard that there's a pair of ravens who have specialized in Stone Mountain, at least last winter, on running the waxwings into a window. So they kind of, when they're all drunkenly kind of doing their murmuration thing, the ravens have been coming in and pushing them against this window so that they're stunned and they can.
Maybe these are the
Hit them
dancing
off.
ravens by the
Oh,
beach.
They were the dancing ravens.
West.
Yeah, you know, I really miss doing the
Reading
community
novels.
writing. That was really fun. Maybe that's what I'd also like to be doing in 3 to 5 years, is back to that,
Because there's still a story on the ravens or the crows that say hello.
Yeah, oh, the Hello Crow.
Yeah.
I have it on video.
Yeah. For those
So
of you who don't know, there were some crows in town last year who learned to say hello, so they would sometimes, because corvids, crows are incredible linguists, so they would come and you'd like be on the wire behind your house or whatever. Hello.
It was nuts.
Yeah, someone must have taught one of them, and then it was pretty
It was fun.
I love that stuff. I was like posting it all. Like, I don't even like social media that much. I was like, did you see this?
Does anybody else know about these crows?
Yeah.
And so we will leave you with that possibility of perhaps reading the next story on the Hello Crow. We don't know. Tune in again next week, when our guest will be David Harrop. Thanks.